Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hi, this is Henry Gilroy, co-executive producer of Star Wars Rebels. You're listening to Aggressive Negotiations.
Welcome to Aggressive Negotiations, Star Wars podcast here on the Nerd Party Network. And I am just one of the hosts here, Matthew Rushing. And with me, as he is always, the Jedi Master who loves Red Stripe, John Mills.
Hey, this Jedi Master loves Red Stripe. This Jedi Master loves red robes. This Jedi Master, however, does not love red rum because that way leads to the way of the Sith. Sorry, a little Shining reference for anybody who hasn't seen The Shining there. So, how are you, Matt? It's good to talk to you.
I have seen The Shining, and I've just got to say, I am not going to come and play with them. So, now or forever. So
I don't know. Somebody's lonely. They just want to play with somebody. Is it really that
some
threatening?
Guy at the bar keeps trying to push, Jack Daniels on me. I'm like, dude, I have more self-respect than to drink Jack Daniels. So,
hey, listen, I will say if I'm stuck in in some sort of hotel and I'm stuck in the snow and the guy pushes something aside and he says, "You don't have to pay anything. Here's some Jack Daniels." I'll say, "Okay, you obviously have an angle, but I'll drink."
Well, as we're thinking about things we won't do in The Shining, we're super excited to be here tonight. And we just want to remind you, we've got a great, fun, very exciting review contest going on over on Apple Podcasts. So we've got so many great reviews. Now, just in case you haven't heard, you can enter into this review contest by giving us a star rating review over on Apple Podcasts over in the U.S. store. And you'll be entered to win a copy of The Art of Star Wars, The Clone Wars. This is from its first season. This is a pretty rare book. It's actually quite expensive if you're trying to find it on Amazon. You got to be willing to plunk down at least 100 or more. And I have an extra copy, and we wanted to give it away to listeners. And so our goal is to try to reach 200 reviews. But John was talking to me tonight, and he was like, we've been getting so many great reviews. Why don't we sweeten the pot? So this is what we're going to do. John has a couple of gifts that he's going to be giving runner-ups.
Yes.
And those runner-ups will not only include all the reviews from when we started the contest, but they're going to it's going to be everybody who's given us a review. So if you've already won something from us, you might win something again. You don't know. So we've got some great runner-up gifts, too. We've got the Myths and Fables book, as well as the fantastic collection of the Book of the Sith, the Book of the Jedi, the Imperial Handbook, as well as the Bounty Hunter's Code in a box set as well. So we've got some great stuff that we're giving away here. So honestly, you really want to make sure that you get your star rating and review in. It helps us, and we just want to say thank you to everybody by giving back. And we just thought, hey, why not just make this even better? So Make sure you get your reviews in.
Yeah, and the thing is, what we're trying to underline here is how much we appreciate you listening. We appreciate the people that have shared reviews on behalf of the show. We appreciate everybody that interacts with us on Twitter. Of course, you can find us at the Jedi Masters on Twitter. You can find the network at Join Nerd Party and the Nerd Party on Facebook and Instagram. We appreciate all of you. We know, especially right now, that we're all trying to find ways to stay in contact with each other. We're all trying to find ways to keep that community going, and it means the world to us that we have our little community, and thank you. And that's just, it's like it's hard to describe exactly how much Matt and I appreciate every single one of you who listens to the show. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it wouldn't be half as much fun to do this show without the interaction that we get from you guys on Twitter and on Facebook and, through the reviews and everything. It's been so much fun, as well as emails, which, John, one of the places people can contact us is over at thenerdparty.com/contact, and you can send us an email. And what we're actually going to talk about tonight comes from a listener, and they emailed us about this idea of Rex and what happens to Rex between what we saw in the Clone Wars and what we see in Rebels. And they said that, they love the character, and they were watching through Rebels for the first time, and they were thinking about the character of Rex and how it seems very interesting the way we pick up Rex in Rebels after the Clone Wars, and that they felt like something was missing because Rex, they said, doesn't seem like someone who would give up the fight and go into retirement. Sure, he said he wondered about the point of the war after such grievous losses and seemed quite disillusioned going into another. But it also seemed like something else had happened to him. And he also was saying, and I thought this was really interesting, he said that one of the Rebels episodes that they had removed their chips, they all had a choice, so he clearly must have gone in search of some of his brethren to try and help him. But then he just goes fishing? And it just doesn't seem like an activity to either try and stop helping his clone brothers, especially if there were signs of like maybe a guilty conscience or they knew of surviving Jedi and everything. And so this is just a really interesting question. You know, he asks even too, why retire? Shoot, for that matter, how could they even retire as official members of the Empire? Wouldn't they have been wanted for treason or something official like that? So just right up front, I just wanted to address it here with the email was, the last time we see Rex in Clone Wars, everybody I think would assume that he died, along with Ahsoka, is because there's nothing left of that ship. You know, it is completely smashed on that planet, and we get the feeling like even Anakin in that moment, as Vader, doesn't think that the apprentice, at least I take it, that he doesn't think his apprentice lives.
Right.
And so I think it's right to assume that nobody knows that Rex is alive. We also know that from the Ahsoka book as well, that they make it look as though they are dead so that they can basically disappear. So right. I think that's one thing that we can just say right up front is that's one of the reasons the Empire doesn't go looking for Rex.
Yes, they have set the stage as best they can at the end of the Clone Wars to make it appear as if they're dead. But I think also the answer to why Rex wouldn't be more involved in the fight in between Clone Wars and Rebels is I would see Rex as somebody who, when the opportunity arose to make a difference, would. But because of the exact things mentioned there, wanted for treason, has evidence that he's tampered with the chip, tampered with himself. He is essentially somebody who has to be as disappeared as he possibly can be. He has to be a ghost. So he can, when he runs across somebody, help them out. But when he is out and about, it makes much more sense for him to be out there as one of his small tribe. For all we know, his tribe could have been larger at one point. But on top of that, it's not feasible for him to go in and help large groups of clones at a time. Look at the trouble Ahsoka herself had saving her best friend in the moments in the Clone Wars at the end there after Order 66. You can't fight a battalion of people like that. Ahsoka couldn't, Rex couldn't. And so I think that it's much more that Rex would wind up being somebody like a one-man A-team, where as the situation presented itself, he would help, but he couldn't risk going out and wading into battle. In a sense, he's just like Obi-Wan. He has to pick and choose his battles. Otherwise, the whole game is up. And so he can make more of a positive difference being quiet and being out of the way until such a time as fate, life, the Force decides that he has to get involved again.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And obviously, we do see that we've got Rex, we've got Wolf, and we've got Gregor in those Rebels episodes. And so obviously Rex has been able to find them. And so there's a story there. And so I get this feeling like one of the things that Rex is going to be doing after this is he is going to be possibly searching for brothers that, were able to battle or fight through Order 66, or be able to find the ones who were able to, destroy their chips or, have them like deactivated in themselves, much the way Ahsoka did for himself. So that's something I actually expect to maybe see in some form or way, whether it's a comic, whether it's a book, whether it's maybe, who knows, maybe it's part of a new animated series or something. But I think that's a time period that you would want to fill in. And I mean, it kind of seems like that might be something to do because we did focus on clones in the last season of the Clone Wars, right? I mean, we focused on, we had a whole arc about different clones that are completely different than the rest of the clones. So it just seems like there's got to be something there that happens with Rex that where he connects with those characters. But we also know, we even have the fact that Ahsoka knows exactly where to find Rex too. So there's something in there with those two as well. Like, I don't feel like Rex has necessarily been out of the fight completely, but I think, like you were saying, he's definitely been very careful as to what he has been doing because he would be seen as a traitor clone.
Well, yeah, and keep in mind the fact that going to help people who have a specific emotional connection with him is a totally different thing than going and trying to help a clone that doesn't know Rex personally. The reason that Ahsoka is even able to help Rex in the way that she does is because of that deep-seated emotional connection that they have. The other clones don't even blink about trying to kill her. They don't know her the way that Rex does. So Rex going up to a clone, he would face that same uphill battle. So I think it is about that emotional connection as well. But I don't think you can either discount the fact that Rex is the survivor of a horrific war where he saw literal brothers of his die by the truckload, including a tragic circumstance where he's going to feel extremely responsible for all of that death. I mean, in a sense, I want to think that Rex went around and did, little things here and there. But even if the story was that he just sat on that planet and, it was a couple of things here and there to get, Wolf and Gregor along with him, I mean, Rex sitting there and just kind of emotionally dealing with the after effects of that is completely believable. He wouldn't want to necessarily go in there. There are, I think it's interesting because the Clone Wars did an incredible job with specific storylines addressing the idea of how clones who were no longer involved in the fight would feel about things. But there's a whole added dimension in that any clones like Rex that are going to have walked away, the galaxy didn't stop. He's got to realize he's a relic by that point. And there's even that episode in Rebels where they happen across the old derelict separatist cruiser and they have to fight one last battle, as it were, for things to wrap up. It's these ghosts that you carry along with you the whole time.
Yeah, and I was thinking about that, where they kind of finished the Clone Wars, in that episode, which was so great. But I was also thinking about the way you mentioned Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I was thinking, in many ways, what we see from Rex is that it's not that he's not willing to fight, but by the time he actually is able to get involved with the rebellion, he is actually needed. They're ready to have somebody like him. They're ready to have somebody with his know-how. Like beforehand, he's not somebody I think that would necessarily be necessary. But by the time that he gets kind of called back into action, and you notice too, it's interesting because he's the one who joins the fight, and you don't see Gregor and Wolf do that. They don't make that decision, and so part of that is, I think, obviously his relationship with Ahsoka and the relationship he begins to foster with like Ezra and Kanan and the rest, and so But I also think Rex is just a character. It's like almost in some ways, like you were talking about, his dealing with everything that went down in the Clone Wars. Now he's almost ready to kind of like pay it back in a way to help rectify the situation, to which, anybody from the Clone Wars era that was on the side of the Republic kind of feels somewhat responsible for the mess that they're in, because they're the tools which Palpatine used to create his empire. And this way, in some ways, Rex then is able to free himself from that. And instead of being a tool for the Empire, he is something that's helping, light the spark of rebellion, which is really cool.
It is. And the thing is, I think that there's, of course, it's a tone poem. Everything echoes, everything rhymes. And getting back to that Obi-Wan sense, that would speak to the idea that Rex, like Obi-Wan, like Yoda, like the members of the generation that screwed things up, would say it's for the younger generation to figure it out. If they need me, I'll answer the call, but this isn't my fight anymore. And that's generally true. One generation does its damage or does its work or anything like that, and it's the job of the next generation to fix it or carry it on, as the case may be. And the older generation tends to step back and say, in a sense, it's that parental role. My time's done in terms of what I can directly do. It's up to you to take up the mantle, but if you need me, I'm here. So, we see again that sort of tone poem echo with Rex. And of course, saying tone poem echo makes me think of Echo himself, which is, another sign maybe that instead, and I know I keep arguing in circles sort of thing, but like maybe that is a sign that Rex was more active during the time period than I'm thinking right now, because he never gave up on Echo. Maybe it's just that he failed several times. I think we sort of approach this idea that if Rex waded into it, it would only be if he could win. But Rex also seems like the kind of guy that would go in against all odds and fight it out. And even if he lost, he'd go back and he'd try again.
See, and I was thinking too, maybe we're just all reading too much into it, which, God forbid Star Wars fans read too much into things.
Yeah, it happens sometimes.
It could just be that the moment that we meet him in Rebels, we're just meeting him at a different place in life, in the sense that, he has done a bunch of things. We just don't know about it. Mm-hmm. We just haven't been told those stories yet. And I think that's kind of the thing that I feel, is that there's a lot of story there, because it's almost 15 years since we last saw him. So I think there's a lot of life for Rex to have lived by that point. Obviously, he loses a lot of hair. And so,
hey, nothing wrong with that.
But he's got a great beard. So that's really the best part.
So wait a minute. Hold on. I'm sorry to cut you off here, but I got to ask you a question. If they're clones, they're all identical clones, shouldn't all of them go bald? Does that mean all of them? Because now that means there's an army of bald soldiers out there in the galaxy. And I'm not saying that's necessarily the best thing or anything, but I'm saying that's kind of a neat thing. But if they're all genetically identical, shouldn't that have all happened to every single one of them?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was just thinking about that. Are they? I'm trying to remember that episode of the Clone Wars. I'm trying to remember that episode, and yeah, I mean, they're not all bald. So maybe it's just that, Rex shaves his head, So
yes, that's true. He's Kojak bald. He's not horseshoe pattern bald.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, I mean, I applaud his decision nonetheless. Hair is a burden.
But yes,
go on.
Believe me, I know all about that.
Yeah.
But no. So I really truly think, and something that, as we're just thinking about this, I really do. I think that The thing about this is there's a story to be told here with what happens to Rex. I think we still have a place for a story to be told with what happens with Ahsoka in this period. I think we have a story to be told with what happens with the Bad Batch. There's a lot of story threads that are still left that, because again, Rebels takes place about 4.5 years before A New Hope, and so that's a lot of time.
It's 4.5. I thought it was a solid 5. Or does it start 5 and go half a year? Or does it start 5 and end at 3.5?
Well, I was just giving it. I was just guesstimating that it's probably about 4.5 ish.
Okay.
So yeah, it could be 5 too. So
it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, it doesn't really
just
matter.
Just so long as Luke is the right approximate age. Sorry.
Yeah. So and we know Ezra was born on Empire Day, so the day that Empire. Right. Yeah. So anyway, but all of that is to say, it's just that's a huge time gap in the Star Wars galaxy, and especially a time gap for something like what the story is with what happens with Rex, and so I don't really see it as something to where there's a big disconnect. I think of it more as the Mandalorians we see at the end of the Clone Wars and the Mandalorians we see in The Mandalorian. Mm-hmm. A lot has changed.
Yeah.
Bo-Katan takes her helmet off all the time. Din never takes off his helmet. So something has happened in that amount of time to have changed the way the Mandalorians act. And in the same way, a lot of time passed for Rex, and we just don't know quite yet exactly what got him to the place that's on that planet, with that walker, with those 3 clones. And I think to me, it just sounds like the start of a beautiful story. I would love to see that story filled in, because obviously, Rex and we imply through the end of Rebels that Rex is the guy on, Endor.
Yes.
And we know that Hera was at Endor as well. So from like books and stuff like that. So it's like, these characters are working their way through the Star Wars galaxy. And to me, it's really cool. And Tamara Morrison supposed to be in The Mandalorian, possibly, it's still in the rumor stage. I had seen that officially confirmed by Disney yet, but
yeah, Hollywood Reporter.
Yeah, wouldn't it be great if he was playing Rex, old clone?
That would be.
I don't need Boba
so
Fett.
crazy.
Just have him be an old clone like Rex. I think it would be fantastic.
I will be honest. I'm happier if he's Rex than he's Boba Fett.
Me too.
I would also be thrilled if he's mistaken for Boba Fett, and then he has to say, "No, I'm
that
Rex."
Would be kind of awesome. Actually,
wouldn't that be great?
Would be kind of awesome. Yeah.
Because the thing is, that would be, oh my God. Well, okay. See, the thing is,
because he looks just like Boba Fett.
Right?
They have the same face.
voice too. Same voice too. After 2004. Before 2004, different voice, but post 2004, same voice. But there's also, and I know that occasionally we sort of get a little poked about being quote unquote in the writer's room sort of thing. But just because my brain is going now with this conversation, how much fun would it be if the whole, involvement of him as an actor were to be that they say, you look like Boba Fett. We've got armor. We're going to do something. Like, we're going to mess with somebody here. Like, that would be a really tricky, interesting, cool sort of thing to do. I'm not saying
what
it
if he
has
just
to.
like moonlights as Boba Fett because like it keeps him safe, right? Who knows? Like, it'd just be great.
He's like the ghost of Boba Fett. He's the one that keeps the myth alive.
The ghost of Boba Fett.
Boba Fett's died. No, I saw him the other day. He was standing in the corner over there.
Yeah, sure. I saw him.
You're out of your mind. He's dead in the Sarlacc. Like, that would be actually a lot of fun, because that would give him the sort of cover that he would need. Or even if the Empire cornered him, it was like, oh, you're a clone. No, I'm Boba Fett. Oh, okay, go on. That sort of thing.
Exactly.
But I mean, in terms of that fill-in story too, because we've made reference to him, but wouldn't it be also fun just to think, I think that there's a part of my brain that says everybody complains about the idea, oh, Obi-Wan hid on Tatooine. Why did he hide on Tatooine? Blah, blah, blah. You know, and you can reason it out. I have all of my reasons why I'm fine with it happening that way. But what if Rex had to stay in contact with Obi-Wan, and every so often Obi-Wan's like, I think somebody's kind of getting on my trail here. Could you help me out here? And like Rex would come in and be like, all right, I'll clean it up for you. You know, that sort of thing. Like that could be a lot of fun too. And there's no, and that's the thing, right? That's the thing that I love about Rex is he's that type of character where you can do that with him. And you want it to be that he had a big, exciting life. That is such a testament to what, I mean, take a second and think about how unbelievably complex they turned these clones' lives into for us in the Clone Wars. I don't look at the prequels the same way anymore. I don't look at the original trilogy era the same way anymore because there's so much shading and depth because of Rex and because of the people around Rex. But Rex especially is such an important character. Like he gets overlooked. People talk about Ahsoka. People talk about Luke. People talk about Ezra. But Rex is a linchpin, man.
Well, and I think, you know, to me, and when we were talking about this on the 602 Club together, I think it's one of the most important reasons for doing the Bad Batch arc is because, you know, this last season of the Clone Wars was all about setting up the two main characters from the Clone Wars whose, you know, we didn't know their fates. And so us getting to spend that time with Rex where it puts another kind of nail in his coffin in the sense of, I just don't know if this is the right place for me. Like, I'm a good soldier, I'm a great soldier, but it's another seed of doubt placed in there. And then, of course, that completely builds off the fact that they then, in that last arc, you know, Ahsoka sees the recording of him talking about his, you know, experience with Fives and how he's just not quite sure what it all means, but he doesn't think he has all the answers. And so this is a guy who really has seen enough to question, and I really like that. I think this is the thing that like makes him such a fantastic character, and I think what is most beautiful about it is that it makes him so human.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he goes from being basically a piece of machinery that's been programmed to do a job, and he's become a fully fledged human. Look, I'm a real boy. You know, but that's exactly what we have with the clones, right? They start off basically as puppets on strings, and the longer we go, the more and more they become free, independent thinking people that have their own ideas. Like, and this is what I think is so interesting. We saw this in the Clone Wars with the Deserter, right? We saw a guy be like, you know what? This war ain't for me. This whole thing is not for me. And he settles down on that planet. He marries a hot Twi'lek, and they have kids, you know, and he has a simple farming life. Like, so I think that what we see here is just so much nuance to which we didn't have before, and that's the beauty of the Clone Wars. And I think, you know, we've talked about this a bunch, but as we're recording, today is the Maker's birthday, and I think that's the reason that George wanted to be able to explore this, because I think even he realized the power of the prequel era and how many stories he could tell here. You notice he never made a animated series in the original trilogy era. I think it's because it's just a smaller era. This, he knows he has such an expansive palette to really be able to play with. And to me, that's what it made it so special. I mean, that's the thing about the Clone Wars versus Rebels anyway. Rebels is a much more focused, family-driven story. It feels very much like the original trilogy. The Clone Wars itself feels like that prequel era. It's expansive. It's big. We can tell almost any kind of story. And there, you have the different types of fandom who love one or the other a little bit more. And for me, the Clone Wars era is everything I ever wanted from good Star Wars storytelling.
Yes. I think that the original trilogy era benefits from the Clone Wars as well, because I think that had Lucas wanted to set something in there, he could have. But the thing is, the time period is so much more condensed. There's very much a sense, I think, of sort of what made him move forward to make Star Wars in the way that he did. Was I remember an interview with him where he talked about being frustrated at the end of THX 1138 because he said, there were other stories I could have told here, but I was kind of boxed in at the end and I couldn't really expand on it. And I think that the original trilogy is expanded by the sense that the prequels and the Clone Wars all belong to there. But I know that's me rambling, but I also want to tack on to what you're talking about and say that Rex himself, and of course, the other clones, but Rex especially, becomes a symbol of how no matter how hard Palpatine tries to strip the humanity from things, tries to take out the love and the compassion and make everybody and everything just a tool to the end of the aggregation and use of power, no matter how hard he tries, humanity and love and compassion and growth are going to stay there. The light side will always stay there, and it doesn't need to be a Force user in how it expresses itself. There are going to be people like Rex, where even though he was literally born and bred to play a specific role, he wasn't going to stay in that role. He was always going to grow beyond that. And there's your symbol of how life itself can't be squelched. Life finds a way, as they say in Jurassic Park, right? Rex is the symbol of that life finding a way, that even if you're not a Force user, the light side will find a way to express itself even in dark times.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think that's the thing that makes Rex so special, is because you see, we always talk about Ahsoka having two dads, but she kind of has three in many ways, because Rex has a major impact on who she is as a person. That last conversation they have before Order 66, she says, you're an incredible soldier, but you're an even better friend. And so you have this relationship between these two where they have truly rubbed off on one another. And they have truly made each other who they are. And in many ways, you think about it, Rex and Ahsoka kind of grow up together too. Rex may be a fully formed, man when he meets her, but experience-wise, he's lived like a half-life, And so all the things that they get to experience together as people, they get to do that together, and they really truly kind of grow up and they choose together who they're going to be based off of the people that they're surrounded with, and they choose the way that they want to act and what they're going to hold on to. And I think it's really, again, it just speaks to the fact that I think the Clone Wars ends in a way that's so perfect, because it's really about these two characters and them surviving what happens, and then we know that they'll move on. And I think that's what makes it so exciting, is there's still a story here to tell. And I think what's amazing is, that animation has created for Star Wars some of the most amazing characters that we've ever seen. Mm-hmm. Personally, some of my favorite characters that we've ever seen. If anybody wants to buy John and I the Hot Toys version of Rex, we'll gladly take it. That's the thing, though, right? Like, you see this character. Like, the reason I brought that up is it's a joke, but it's kind of not a joke, but it's a joke. Is that's how popular Rex is, right? Like, they do something from the Clone Wars, and the first thing they do is Captain Rex, from And I think it speaks to who this character is, and he has such a great story, and I hope that we get to spend more time with him in some form or fashion, because I just feel like it would be great, whether that's between, the Clone Wars and Rebels, but, if that's the Mandalorian, wherever they want to use him, please do, because it's a character that I care about and I can't wait to kind of know more about.
Yeah. The only tweak I would offer to all of the beautiful stuff you were just saying is my approach is I tend to see Rex as Ahsoka's brother, because they are essentially the same age.
Point. Yeah, I like that.
And I think that's why they're able to be friends, whereas there's always going to be that distance between Ahsoka and Anakin and Obi-Wan. No matter how much she loves them, they're always going to be authority figures to her. Whereas Rex is, from their first meeting is brother and sisterly, where, hey, Rex, take care of the kid. Huh? He's a babysitter the first time he ever
he's like the big brother babysitter. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but and that's the thing, right? Like you said, Rex is a beloved character. This is a character who came out of nowhere. This is a character who just sort of all the way down to his armor, because I know when you and I were having a text conversation with Nick, and something that really struck me that I guess I think about and forget every so often, but down to the fact that Rex's armor, the paint pattern reflects Anakin's pod racer paint pattern in a certain sense, is so, I think, symbolic of the fact that, intentional or not, I think it's so symbolic of the fact that Rex will retain that innocence and goodness that Anakin loses. That there's a symbol of that youth and that goodness that is always there, that Rex will symbolize. So, obviously we could go on and on about Rex, and we would love to, but one last thing I want to throw out there, one last question I want to throw out there to you. Just as a question, do you think Ahsoka survives Order 66 without Rex?
I mean, I don't see how. I feel like he's pivotal. She couldn't have done that alone, and I think we saw in the last arc they obviously both almost die. They both get shot. So, and part of that, the reason that they're not dead is because they do have each other there. And so, I don't know how Ahsoka could have survived. She may have survived the first onslaught. But, without Rex there, she would have definitely had to team up with Maul to escape. Because there's no other way she would have made it. And so, absolutely. That's the only other way that I think Ahsoka could have lived. Without Rex, she either has to do that same thing to another clone, or she has to have, somebody like, Maul's with her there. So, yeah, absolutely. It means so much more because it is Rex, and so it makes for the perfect story. They start the wars together, and they end up together, and they're able to survive and go on to live another and fight another day, and so I think that's really what's beautiful. And in the end, what we see with Ahsoka and Rex is that. It just the reason I don't think Rex just kind of sat around and did nothing, I think he had the same type of life that Ahsoka did in some ways. Like, he's doing what he can, and then she knows exactly where to call him, and he's just waiting for the call, basically. I think to say, hey, we need you, So because there's no way he as a character is going to sit down on his laurels and let somebody else do something when he could. So. Especially
when Ahsoka's involved.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
There's that sibling love always going to be there for her.
Well,
and that's
in
such
many
a beautiful
ways,
thing.
He owes her his life, right? You know, like she saved him and he saved her, and it's like, and that's the thing. And you do that kind of thing, it truly brings people together in a way that nothing else could. Life and death situation will bring you together with a person in a way that nothing else could. And I think that's one of the things we also see with those two characters, and why they're so close, you know, and why they'll do anything for each other. So, yeah, I think it just goes to prove, is again, as we've been saying a bunch tonight, is that there's still so much that we could do with these characters, and that's just so cool. I just love when there's just open story potential.
Yeah. Speaking of open potential, I think that there's plenty of open potential for people to reach out to you online and ask you further questions about Captain Rex. So where can people find you out there, out and about on the internet or on the airwaves?
Yeah, you can do that on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, Vero. I'm under the name Matt Rushing02. I'm here on the network doing Owl Post with Drea Kaufman as we talk about Harry Potter each and every week. And in fact, we just wrapped up the Half-Blood Prince, and we're getting into the Deathly Hallows. So we've reached the last book, which is really exciting. You can also find me over on the Trek FM network. I mentioned earlier the 602 Club, which is our General Geek show. John was just on there as we talked about the entire final season of the Clone Wars together. So that was so much fun. Check that out. You can also find me doing The Orb with Chris Jones, talking about Star Trek Deep Space Nine. And as we're currently in the pandemic mode, Cinema Stories is waiting to come back, but I do that with my friend Courtney, and you can also find that show, and that's where we talk about films through the lens of faith. So, John, I know people want to talk to you here about more Clone Wars stuff, so where can they find you online?
Nobody wants to talk to me about anything, but thank you for that sweet little lie. You can find me as Kessel Junkie over on the internet, KESSELJUNKIE. Yeah, I'm a snarky guy, kind of guy over on Twitter. You can. I'm probably a little bit more fun to connect with over on Letterboxd or even on Instagram, where even occasionally I'll share some artwork that I make. And I'm working on a top secret project for the Nerd Party as we record this. That's coming in summer 2020. So be on the lookout for that.
Ooh, you're like one of those like movies coming out. Like, I don't even have an exact date, but summer 2020.
This will be released sometime about something. Somewhere something will happen at some point, but I don't know
You're
when.
A fortune teller.
That's right. Yes, exactly. I'm walking around saying the podcast is nigh, but what else is nigh is that my chrono says that it's time to close these negotiations.
John, negotiations are closed.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.